Today class, and today's topic is on your greatest enemy. Actually, in spiritual life, many people make beginnings, and after they make a beginning, I would say majority of them fall away because they make a start, but after they've made a start, after a month or 2 months or 3 months of enthusiastic effort, suddenly there is slackening in the effort and the dissipation of the spiritual practices, and eventually they go back to whatever they were doing right in the beginning. I have not seen it once or twice or thrice, I have seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Then there are those people who come to spiritual life and they seem to be very steady and very fired up. And they remain in spiritual life very active, very enthusiastic for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then they fall away. Then there are those who come to spiritual life, and after coming to spiritual life, after 10, 15 years, after taking sannyas, after being given the appellation of guru, suddenly they vanish from the scene of active spiritual life. So when we see this happening to people around us, we must try to understand what is really happening, because if we don't understand what is happening to people around us, it can happen to us also. In fact, spiritual life is like a battlefield, and there are people who are being shot all around us, and unless we know where the bullets are coming from, it's very likely that we will also fall victim to the same bullets. In fact, we often ask people that what do you think is your greatest obstacle in spiritual life? Or we ask people, what is your greatest enemy in spiritual life? And what answer do they give? The commonest answer they give is, yes, Maya. See, Maya, illusion is the greatest obstacle in spiritual life. But where is this illusion situated? From where does it arise? How does it get hold of you? And how can we combat it? In fact, when the Americans fought the war in Vietnam, the world's richest nation with the best soldiers, the best equipped, after fighting a long battle with probably the world's poorest nation, eventually had to leave the battlefield. So people were always wondering that how come the Americans, who were the richest nation, best soldiers, best weapons, how did they lose battle with the Vietnamese who were so poor and ill-equipped? So I remember reading an interview with an American soldier, and they asked him, what do you think, as the man on the field, what do you think was the reason why you all had to leave the battlefield? And you know what answer he gave? He said the answer was that in actual fact we never knew who the enemy was. He says we would go, the whole troop would come, we would march around, we would patrol the countryside, and we would never see the enemy anywhere. We would play with the children, we'd give them sweets. Then before we knew what was happening, suddenly we would all be shot down. Suddenly an old lady would be coming along, would leave a basket on a bicycle nearby us, and that basket would contain a bomb. Or a child would come and put a hand grenade in the midst of us and run away. So we never really knew who the enemy was. So if you don't know who the enemy is, then how can you fight a war? You have to lose. So also in spiritual life, unless we are aware who our enemy is, unless we are very clear what we are up against, we must lose the battle in spiritual life. Therefore, it's very important to know who the enemy is. And the enemy is none other than the mind. The enemy is none other than the mind. In fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a very interesting story. And this story in the Srimad Bhagavatam is a story which is related by an Avadut to the ancestor of the Yadu dynasty. So the ancestor of the Yadu dynasty is being related a story by this Brahman Avadut, and he tells him the story of a Brahmin from Avanti. So he says this Brahmin was very intelligent, he was very learned, and in addition to all this, he was also very rich. And since he had all the wonderful qualities as well as wealth, He had large family, many relatives living with him, many friends, many business associates, and he was leading a happy life. But one day what happened? He lost all his money. He lost all his money, he lost all his livelihood. Completely, absolutely. When he lost all his money, what happened? First of all his friends left him. Every single one of his friends left him. Actually, this is one of the tests. How do you know who your real friend is? Your friend is one who sticks to you through thick and thin. Your friend is one who sticks to you and knows what is best for you, and even if things are not going well for you, he remains with you. In fact, the other day somebody told me, he said that when I've started becoming God conscious, when I've started becoming Krishna conscious, now my friends have started abandoning me. They say, "Arey Sala, you're not eating meat, how can we call you to our house? You don't serve alcohol in your house, how can we come there? There's nothing to entertain us." So I said, then you know who your real friends are. Because the real friends will prepare food that you eat. Your real friends will come to visit you even if you don't serve alcohol. These are your real friends. But the best way to find out who your friends are is when you have lost everything. And this poor Brahmin of Avanti, he discovered that when he lost all his wealth, he lost all his friends also. All of them were fair weather friends. So when he lost all his friends, gradually, even his relatives began to abandon him. First the extended family, because he was living in a large joint family which he was supporting. And then gradually everybody, even his children who were grown up, left. And finally his wife also left to go and live with the children. And this poor Brahmin was left all alone. He had no friends, no family, no wealth. And being all alone, he thought about the situation that he was in. And he thought that maybe God has been kind to me. He has taken everything away from me so that I can depend on Him. So let me, now that I have lost everything, let me take wholeheartedly to spiritual life. And this Brahmin took the order of sannyas. So he became a sannyasi. So you would have thought that now that he has made a great step in spiritual life, he has entered into spiritual life, and having entered into spiritual life wholeheartedly, now there should be no problems for him. But in actual fact, his problems had only just begun. Because although he had taken sannyas, nobody showed any respect for him. When he would walk through the streets, people would say, this fellow, when he had a lot of money, he was a very proud man. Now that he's lost everything, he is taken to spiritual life. Now that he's in difficulty, he is taken to spiritual life. So nobody had any respect for him. When he would walk through the streets, children used to pelt him with stones. People used to talk rudely and abusively to him. When he used to sit down and eat food by the bank of the river, children used to come and spit on the top of his head, or they would try to pass urine when he had spread the food on the ground. When he was sleeping, people would steal his bag of beads, they would steal his sannyas danda. When he would take a Maun Rath, they would come and they would beat him with sticks. So that being beaten with sticks, he had no choice but to open his mouth and say something, even if it was in pain. So this was the miseries that this poor Brahmin of Avanti went through. This was the misery that he went through. That not only he lost his family, his wealth, his friends, but even after taking through spiritual life, the miseries did not leave him. In fact, people persecuted him more and more and more. So at this point, Krishna is actually relating this story to Uddhava. So Krishna tells Uddhava in the Uddhav Gita that this Brahmin was able to tolerate, he was able to bear all the sufferings and all the miseries simply by singing what is known as the song of the Avanti Brahmana. Simply by singing the song of the Avanti Brahmana, he was able to bear all the sufferings and all the miseries. So Uddhava asks Krishna that please let me hear the song that he sang. What is the song that helped him to bear his miseries? Because I also have miseries and everybody has miseries. And simply if we hear this song when we are in misery, we can also chant this song and maybe we will also be able to bear our miseries. Because in this world, nobody is free of misery. This is known as Dukh Alayam or Shashvatam. This is a place of misery where everything is temporary. It's also known in the Bhagavad Gita as Anityam asukham lokam. This is a place where nothing is permanent and there is no happiness in this world. This is asukham lokam. So Krishna tells him the song that the Avanti Brahmana used to sing, because he was being persecuted and tortured by so many people. And you know what he used to sing? He used to say, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur. He says, these people who are persecuting me, they are not responsible for my distress. Very often we think that the cause of our problems is just this one rascal. If something is done to this one rascal, then everything will work out fine for me. That person may be anybody. It may be your father. In Kali Yuga, it may be your father, it may be your brother, it may be your business partner, it may be your boss, it may be anybody, maybe your employee, maybe your employer. But there is always somebody we find to blame for our miseries. We say, this is the person who is responsible for my miseries. Everything in my life is going smoothly and wonderfully, but this one person is the cause of my miseries. If something is done to him, everything in my life will run smoothly. But he says very clearly, he says, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur. No, he says, these people are not responsible for the miseries that I am suffering. He says, Na devata atma griha karma kal. No devata. Sometimes we feel that if we do not propitiate the demigods, then they will cause suffering and misery for us. I remember one gentleman who came and told me, he says, you say that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, but I have been worshipping Ganesh. Every year I bring him to my home. Now this year, I know that if I don't bring Ganesh to my home, what will happen? He will bring misery on me, because he will not be satisfied. He will inflict all kinds of misery on me if I don't bring him this year. So I am forced to bring him. So what happens? You often blame the demigods that, oh, because I have not done this for this devata, or I have not done this for that devata, those devatas will trouble me and harass me and bother me. I remember my friend, he used to feel that if on Saturday he did not go to Hanuman Mandir, then he was in bad trouble. Why? Because he would be put in a difficult situation. So people always believe that some demigod or the other is going to bother him. So he said, no devata, not the demigods, not these people are harassing me, these people are not harassing me, neither are the demigods harassing me. No devata, atma. Sometimes we feel the body. Atma also means body, it also means mind, it also means soul. Here it means body. So sometimes we feel our body is causing us distress. Today I met one patient who was telling me, he says, doctor, everything in life is wonderful for me. Only this body of mine is causing so much pain and distress and misery. So all my sufferings are due to these bodily conditions. I agree with you that once we free ourselves from this body, then only we can be happy. Because the body causes miseries and unhappiness. But this Avanti Brahmana says that no, he says, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur. No, devata atma, not this body also is the cause of your miseries. Sometimes we feel that if I had a better body, a healthier body, a fitter body, I would be better. He says, no, it's not your body that's causing you distress. He says, neither griha. Sometimes we feel stars are responsible. Now, devata atma griha. My friend came and told me, he says, now I am in trouble. I said, what happened? He says, abhi mera साढ़े साथी shuru hone wala hai. I said, what is this साढ़े साथी? He says, 7.5 years of Saturn. And these 7.5 years of Saturn mean that Saturn is going to harass you and harass you and harass you and harass you. So now my Sadhe Sati is beginning. This is the time and period when I am really going to go through a difficult time. So as I pointed out, my friend, he feels that if he doesn't go to Hanuman Mandir on Saturday, then there is nobody to protect him from Shani. So Shani will come and will give him a lot of distress and a lot of unhappiness. Sometimes people feel that they are going through, I have friends who are also very interested in astrology. In fact, myself, I have taken great interest in astrology. So people feel that because I am going through the Mahadasha of the worst period, worst planet in my horoscope, I am going through great difficulty. Now I have to suffer for 10 years. And after this 10-year Mahadasha is over, only then I will have a comfortable time in life. But This Brahmin says very clearly, he says, Nayam jano me sukha dukha hetur na devata atma griha. Not even the stars are responsible. He says, no griha karma kal. Sometimes we feel that karma is responsible for my suffering. All the impious activities that I have done in the past, these impious activities that I have done in the past are bearing fruit today. And because the impious activities of the past are bearing fruit today, therefore I am studying. I am suffering. In fact, there was yesterday I met one lady who was saying, my mother, she always says that when sufferings come upon her, she says, ye to mere pichle janam ke karm honge. That's why I am suffering. So she blames the karma that she has done in the past for the present suffering. But he says, no, not even your karma is responsible for your suffering. And neither Kal. Sometimes we say that it is eternal time that is responsible for all our miseries, because time takes everything away. It takes away family, friends, relations. It takes away money, it takes away a job, it takes away eventually your own life. So sometimes people blame Kal. So he says, not even Kal, not even time is responsible for my suffering. So Nayam jano me sukha dukha etur no devata atma griha karma kala. Never blame all these people for your miseries. It's not people who are torturing you. Neither the demigods, nor your body, nor your bad stars, nor your past karma, not even eternal time itself. Then what is responsible for the suffering? This was identified by the Brahmin of Avanti, and because he was able to identify the main cause of his suffering, he was able to tolerate the miseries. And what did he identify as the cause of his sufferings? He said very clearly, he said, Mana param karanam amananti sansara chakram parivartayedyat. It is my mind and my mind only which is the cause of all my sufferings. It's my mind and it's my mind only which is the cause of all my sufferings. And he says, and it is my mind that drags me again and again into the cycle of birth and death. So the cause of the miseries is not other people. The cause of miseries is not your body, not the demigods, not your bad stars, not your previous karma, not even eternal time. The cause of all your sufferings in this world is none other than your own mind. It is your mind that is your greatest enemy, and it is your mind that is the cause of your suffering. Sometimes people say that, no, I don't agree, it's my mind. These things are actually real. These things are actually troubling me. I have got a diseased body. I am going through my Sadesati period. I have offended the demigod. I have performed bad karma for which I am suffering today. But these are only external manifestations of suffering. The actual suffering takes place inside here. The actual suffering takes place inside here. It takes place because of your mind. For one who has controlled his mind, there is no suffering. Therefore it has been said that the mind is your greatest enemy, your mind is your greatest friend. For one who has controlled his mind, the mind is the greatest friend. But for one who has not controlled his mind, the mind is the greatest enemy. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bandhur atmana atmanastasya yena atmayava atmana jita anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmayava tu shatruvat. That the mind can be your greatest friend or your greatest enemy. For one who's controlled the mind is the greatest friend. For one who has not controlled the mind is the greatest enemy. And the mind is the cause of all suffering. You see people who are going through unimaginable difficulties, but they are unshaken by them because they have controlled their mind. That is the definition of a person who has controlled his mind. So once again, it is the mind which is your greatest enemy. It is the mind which is the cause of sufferings. And finally, it is your mind which makes you fall down from spiritual life and re-enter into material life. Actually, you cannot get rid of your mind. Your mind is your constant companion. Where you go, your mind will go with you. I remember one boy came to me and told me, he says, I am absolutely disgusted now with what I am doing here in India. I've got serious plans to emigrate to America, and once I go to America, I'll be happy. So I told him that, look, you're still young. You may go to America, but if you go to America, you're taking your greatest enemy along with you. Your mind is going to accompany you right from here to America. And the cause of your misery is not your external circumstances. The cause of your misery is your mind. And if you are not able to control your mind, then you will be taking your misery on your back along with you. I remember we used to have the stories of Sinbad the sailor. So in Sinbad the sailor, there is an example of Sinbad the sailor who's marooned on a desert island. And when he goes on a desert island, what does he find? He finds an old, hunchbacked, wretched looking man sitting on the beach. And that hunchbacked dwarf, old man, he looks at him and says that I am crippled and hunchbacked, please carry me. Because if you carry me, I'll be able to get up from this beach and go to some place more comfortable. So Sinbad, being very kind to him, takes him on his back. But once that old man is on his back, he has great distress, because that old man is the old man of the sea, and he has no intention of getting off from Sinbad's back. Not only he sits on his back, but he locks his ankles behind Sinbad's shoulder blades and holds on to Sinbad's hair and ear, and he makes him go here and there and here and there, and he bites him and kicks him and he boxes him until Sinbad does exactly what he wants. So our mind is like the old man of the sea on Sinbad the sailor's back. Try as you may, you cannot get rid of him. And that mind will accompany you, and it will force you to do exactly what it wants to do. You know that it is bad. You know that you shouldn't do it. You know that you should be doing something else. But your mind will drag you and force you and pinch you and box you and pull your hair and pull your ear and force you to do exactly what you should not do. And try as you might, there is no way that you can take the mind off your back. Because the mind is the most difficult thing to control. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking to Arjuna, and Arjuna tells him, he says, Chanchalahi mana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigram manye vayoriva saduskaram. He says, my mind is restless, it is turbulent, it is obstinate. Restless, turbulent and obstinate, and to try to control my mind is like trying to control the wind. To try to control the mind is like trying to control the wind. So it is impossible to try to control the mind or get rid of it, because the mind will harass you and force you to do exactly what you should not do. And the characteristics of the mind are such that it will completely fool you into thinking that you are doing the right thing. Because the mind can convince you exactly what it wants to convince you. It will make you believe that what you are doing is the right thing. It will give you hundreds of arguments and thousands of arguments and millions of arguments why what you are doing is the best thing under the right circumstances. And no matter how you try to approach the mind will try to escape from your efforts to control it. It's like trying to kill a cockroach. Anyone here tried to kill a cockroach? Even if you corner a cockroach in the corner of the room and you approach it with a slipper to bang the cockroach to death, suddenly the cockroach will flatten itself and get into a crevice and will be out of your reach. So the mind is like that. At least cockroach you can see, the mind you can't see. Sometimes you think you are the mind. So how can you actually control the mind or kill it? Because it is absolutely impossible to try to control it by normal means. It will escape, it will wriggle, it will squeeze, it will rationalize, it will argue and explain to you, and it will convince you that what you are doing is the right thing. This is the nature of the mind. And the qualities of the mind are such that it has got three main defects. What are the three main defects of the mind? One is, its first defect is it has got mala, that means it has got impurities. What are these impurities? These impurities are the past impressions that are already inflicted and present in the mind. Lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness, these are all the mal, all the impurities that are there in the mind. And these impurities are remaining in the mind waiting to manifest themselves. And every activity which you do, which is motivated by lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness, that is stored in the mind as mal. I remember my friend, in medical college. He was telling me, he says, look, don't give me lectures about avoiding illicit sex or waiting until I get married. He said, see, I made up my mind that until I get married, I will have as much fun with as many women and girls as I like. But once I get married, I'll be very faithful to my wife. So I said, do you realize what you're doing? He said, what do you think I'm doing? I told you this is what I'll do. I said, just try to understand one thing. You have underestimated the capacity of your mind. Every action you do, which is actually motivated by lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, is imprinted in your mind. You think that when you are with your wife, you will be alone. You are not going to be alone with your wife. When you are with your wife, all your former girlfriends will also be sitting around you. Why? Because you will be carrying them with you in your mind. And this is a fact. I told him, you do what you want and you tell me after you get married whether what I said is correct or not. And you will notice that you are never alone with a woman that you have married, because you are carrying with you that mull, that impurities. And those impurities in the form of those women will accompany you wherever you are. You are carrying them as your baggage on your back. These mental impressions are permanently installed in your brain now. So this is the mull that everybody carries around. Then we have Vikshep. The mind is always tossing. It's always restless. It can never sit in one place. It is impossible for the mind to sit in one place. In fact, the mind has been compared to a street dog. Have you seen a street dog anywhere? Dog never sits in one place. It's always looking for some interesting smell, and it will go to one place, find something interesting. After some time, it will get bored. Again, it's always roaming from one place to the other. It can never be sitting in one place. Therefore, it goes from one place to another place to another. And what happens to the street dog? It gets kicked. It goes to one place. When it gets a kick, then it leaves and goes to the next place. That is the nature of the mind. The mind will pursue one train of thoughts until it gets one kick. Then when you get a kick, mental kick, and you realize that, oh, I was not doing the right thing, then you will still go in another direction. And so this is the nature of the mind. Like a street dog, it will go sniffing in all the dirtiest places until it is forcibly kicked and thrown out. In fact, the mind is also compared to the monkey. The monkey cannot sit still on one tree. It's always swinging from branch to branch. It's always swinging from one place to the other. This is the nature of the mind. It is always restless and it is always turbulent. It can never sit still in one place. And don't think that you can actually try to control this restlessness. Have you ever seen mercury? Mercury in a thermometer? Try to take mercury in a thermometer and close your fist over it. The mercury will slip out from between your fingers. And when it falls, each one drop of mercury will become hundreds of drops of mercury. Hundreds, literally hundreds, you will see shiny globules of mercury on the floor. So also the mind has a tendency that it can never be gripped, because it always slips out of your grasp. Not only it slips out of your grasp, but it goes in 1 million directions. It goes in 1 million directions. And lastly, the mind contains within it the ability of avarana. That is, it covers over. How does it cover over? The ability of the mind is that it covers you over with the illusion. What illusion does it cover you over with? The illusion of permanency. This is the illusion in the world. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that na sato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sata ubayor api drishtantastva anayos tattvadarshibhi. That of what is unreal there is no continuation, and of that which is real there is no cessation. This is what learned seers have concluded. That if something is unreal, then it will not last. But if something is real, it will be permanent. But in the world we see around us, what is permanent? Nothing is permanent in the world. Nothing is permanent. Can you name anything just now which you see with your eyes, hear with your ears, smell with your nose, taste with your tongue, touch with your skin that is permanent? Nothing that you can perceive through your senses is permanent. And yet the nature of the mind is it will convince you absolutely that whatever is around you that you can perceive with your senses is permanent and will always be there. In fact, it is said that the illusion of the mind has got two abilities. It's called avarnatmika shakti and prakshepatmika shakti. Avaranatmika shakti is covering over and prakshepatmika shakti is pulling down. So I remember when we used to go and